I never thought I could be so handy from home. Got to
Well,
adapt.
here we are. This is Gary Borgendale, and welcome to First Tuesday Conservatives, along with Alpha News. And we have a great conversation going on this evening with Jake Duesenberg. And Jake works with, as an executive director for Action for Liberty. And so tonight's topic, we're going to be talking about Governor Walz edicts. I don't know if that's the right word. Anyways, relative to restaurants here in Minnesota. And so with that, we'll go ahead and introduce Jake. And Jake, welcome. It's great to have you on board with us for First Tuesday Conservatives and Alpha News MN.
Thanks for having me, and I'm glad to be back with you guys.
Great. Well, Jake, before we get into it, let's talk a little bit about your organization, Action for Liberty. So give us kind of an update on that organization.
So our mission is to protect liberty for the next generation, and we've been existing in Minnesota since about the Tea Party years. Gary, we would have met back in the Tea Party days.
Correct.
And we have kind of shifted in the last many years to an organization that's more geared towards getting good freedom legislators elected at the Capitol, and then pushing the conservative agenda. And then, of course, this year happened, and we looked at what Governor Walz did right from the start in March and said, well, this is too far. This is tyrannical. So we pushed back right away against Governor Walz, and we said, this is the wrong course of action for Minnesota. And basically, as most people are aware, in Minnesota, I mean, people might be watching outside the state, but we have had a terrible governor who keeps treating us like his subjects. We had a lockdown all the way into June last year. And then our governor went back that same failed policy this November. And so we're currently right now in a lockdown where restaurants and bars can't even open. I'm sorry, I take that back. Our gracious dictator has now allowed bars and restaurants to open up with 50% capacity outside. And if you don't live in Minnesota, not a lot of people like dining outside this time of year.
Outside of Minnesota. I want to go back a little bit before we jump deep into the restaurant conversation. Jake, you and your organization were very instrumental, I would say, in moving votes. First of all, getting Republicans on board with this, and then getting Democrats. So tell me, how close did you get to getting understanding executive powers in Minnesota, that it requires both houses then to vote against it? So when you have the Democrats in control of the House, that's where the issue is. So the Republicans, you had to get them going forward in the Senate, and it took a while there. I want to just highlight, because you've done a great work, and I want to just highlight on that briefly, Jake.
Yeah, so the way that Minnesota's laws work, and we've learned, who would ever thought this was going to be an issue back in 2019 and before. And we learned that this emergency powers statute 12.31, was written so poorly. And of course, any, governor or politician that wants more power can have a loose interpretation of this statute and just have unlimited power. And that's what's happening right now. Honest to God, I don't know what he feels limits his power at this point. And the way the law is written is that the only way that he can really lose his power after he's got the 5 yes men of this executive council is if the legislature passes a resolution in both the House and the Senate to actually remove that power. So that's the mechanism. We started this battle out on April 14th was our first vote. We only got 15 Republicans to vote for that. House Republican leadership, Kurt Dowd and his gang, tried derailing this. So we started out in a really bad position, but by the end of April, we had all 59 Republicans in the House on board. We could not get a vote in the Minnesota Senate. Now, if you think, like a Scott Jensen type or some one of these characters in the Senate are like some hero, they're not at all. We couldn't get a single one. We actually thought Scott Jensen, who introduced the resolution, might do something in May, and they adjourned signing day in May without giving us a vote. So we had to go look for some primary challenges, and one of those was against Paul Gazelka, and we found a guy that wanted to do it, and we encouraged him to do it. And lo and behold, June came around, and Paul Gazelka all of a sudden got good on the issue, and they gave us a vote, and it passed. The Senate had, I think, 3 Democrats at the time that voted in favor of it. So that was a big hurdle that we passed. And then the House actually, yeah, thanks. The House had 2 Democrats, Gene Plowski and Paul Marquardt, 2 rural Minnesotans voted on the initial one in June. Well, then over the next couple months, because every 30 days, the governor has to extend his emergency powers. And then if the legislature is not in session, he has to call them back. And they adjourn in May. They're done with their business, right?
Right.
So he calls them back every 30 days. And every 30 days, we get a different chance at this thing. And by October, we had gotten 5 Democrats on board. So we needed 4 more Democrats. 4 more Democrats. So our organization...
All the Republicans.
All Republicans, yes, that's important to say. All 59 Republicans and then 5 Democrats. All we needed was 4 more Democrats, and we went to the voters in these districts because it's October and this last chance before election. And I'm happy to report we took out 4 Democrats and replaced some of them, like Brad Tapke, who's just this horrible politician, Shakopee. We replaced him with Eric Mortensen, who's going to be a rock star for us up at the Capitol.
Good.
So we're all set. We're ready to go. And January is going to come around, and then Governor Walz want to shut us down again. So we had a real battle on our hand. And I know we're going to talk about the defiance because Action for Liberty, our name is not couch potatoes for liberty. We don't sit on the couch waiting for something to happen. That's
what I like about your organization. That's what I like about your organization. It is action.
Yeah, some people hate that about us. The politicians hate that about us, even the Republicans. Because, in November, we didn't get a vote by the Senate Republicans. So guess what? We were going to be on a thorn in their sides again. People have to understand that just because you got a R behind your name doesn't mean you're one of the good guys. If we went away, these guys would not end this power. So, and we have 100,000 plus supporters at Action for Liberty. That's actually who's doing it. I might serve as a president of this organization, and we have a fantastic board. Our strategy team and our volunteers are great, but really we're useless if we don't have 100,000 people behind us. And that's why we have real power in this battle.
So Jake, where can people go to get more information about Action for Liberty?
So go to actionforliberty.com. This is actually really important. If you're sitting at home and you got nothing else you can give to the movement, just go to actionforliberty.com. You'll see our petition. It's called End Walz Emergency Powers. Sign that petition. Because what we do is we send these petitions to these targeted Democrats, but also we then know where people live and can make sure that the people in those districts are calling and contacting and emailing their legislators to get them on board, because we're going to need your vote here in January. It's going to be very important. We technically have the numbers now to end Walz emergency powers. We just have to put the pressure on it in the last final hour to make sure that these guys stay true.
And so the last vote you had in December, you came up 1 vote short to end the powers, if that's correct.
It's a little goofy. It's a procedural move, so I don't want to get into the nuances of it.
Oh, okay.
We were still, and there's people that didn't show it too. So it was a procedural move. It's a good test vote for us. We need a clean vote, which we can get in January on the bill. And we have 64 Republicans taking office. So we need 4 Democrats on board to get a majority, which is 68. So we need 4 Democrats. And we already got 6 Democrats on board. So if we just have 2/3 of the ones that have already voted for this thing, we're good. Now, don't think that's going to be easy. These are politicians. They're greasy, so we still have to put the pressure on it. But technically, we should have the numbers now.
And I think that's important for all of us to understand. Yes, we may work for the candidate or the party in electing them. And most times we think, well, our job is done. Now they'll just vote where we want them to go. But they really need our encouragement, sometimes support, sometimes opposition to them, because that's how this thing gets done. And Jake, you've been very good about doing that.
Thank you.
Let's go move a little bit more now into the recent lockdown again by Governor Walz, and describe what specifically as this relates to the restaurants in Minnesota. And let's go on that topic, Jake, if you would.
This governor hates taverns. I don't know if he just loses all his games of pool and darts, but this might seem ancient news now. He started back in November with a executive order that prohibit us from playing darts at a bar. No, you can't make this up. I remember seeing like the "Don't tread on me" with the dart sign. A clever little picture. Because the science. You're too close throwing darts, and you're around these people and playing pool and stuff. Not
Might get
Walmart
in,
lunch, by the way.
might
Not
get in
Walmart
the
lunch.
eye.
So I mean, he must have just sucked at his dart leagues or something. I don't know. But he banned darts, and then eventually, about a week later, and everyone knows that there was a surge in November and an honest surge in numbers in COVID. By the way, no one understands COVID. Like these people keep talking about the science. We don't understand this. If we understood the science of COVID, right? California should be in best shape because they've closed everything down except for the governor's restaurant plans. But other than that, they've shut down everything in California. They should be doing the best, and they're not. They're actually still in a lot of trouble. And of course, Wisconsin, North Dakota, South Dakota, we're surrounded by wide open. Wide open. Iowa too. They're wide open. Why are their numbers not like astronomical? They're coming down too. But we all had this in the Midwest. We had this surge in November. So Governor Walz shuts down. He decrees an Executive Order 20-99 that all restaurants, bars, entertainment facilities, sports, youth sports, and gyms and fitness centers have to close down. They can't be open. Not like 50% capacity or anything like that. They got to close down. So of course, that just we can't have that. That's wrong. That's wrong on all bases here. First of all, let me cover a couple things real quick. These terrible politicians always say they got the science on their side, but one science that's really settled that we've known for decades is that youth sports are very healthy for a young developing mind. We know
Absolutely.
that. We know that co-curricular activities, after school activities, not just sports, but other things, other clubs are very important for the developing young mind. And he eradicates that. We also know that young adults have about, I think in a study, 47% are showing depressive symptoms. And suicidal thoughts and thoughts of death are at about a third of the population, which is up tenfold from a study that was done about 5-6 years ago.
Just now in the COVID time, because of the lack of the students' options to participate in these different things.
Lockdown, yeah. Kids need to be around other kids, right? And they're labeled super spreader. We also know from the evidence right now of people who contract COVID that they're the most least affected by COVID, especially young kids don't seem to get impacted at all by COVID, right? It's really something that's affecting people with underlying health conditions, obesity, and for the most part, the elderly, right? So we're going after these young kids, and you can imagine kids, all the way up to age 25, when the brain's finally fully formed, you're telling them they can't go to a tavern, they can't meet with friends at a restaurant. I mean, I remember being that young, and that's what we did is we would go to restaurants. Yes, it was life. I see this personally. I have friends and family. I don't want to get into it, but I could see it personally in these young adults that are impacted by it. I know a lot of people watching this are seeing this firsthand. So this is what they're doing is they're shutting down part of our economy, and it's really affecting these people. There's also, people my age, I'm in the stage where I got young kids, and it's kind of tough being locked in the house with these little kids all the
time. You love your kids, but man,
I love my kids.
Get time out, please.
But you know what I mean? So I want to cover those two things first. Then on top of that, you are killing our economy. And it just looks like this is a massive hit job on small business, because the science that shuts down a bar or restaurant somehow doesn't apply to Walmart and Target, which have lines that you stand in for 40 minutes closer to a stranger than you would if you were in a bar and a restaurant. Right. Somehow that science doesn't exist. The science also doesn't exist at airport restaurants or on planes. The science doesn't exist at casino restaurants and bars, which are fully open. That science somehow doesn't exist at school cafeterias if they are open, which are not happening too much now. And they don't exist when corporations have dining facilities. It's like so you're talking about science and it doesn't apply to those people. I think it's pretty obvious this is just a fraud on the American people. And so Governor Walz is actually shutting down restaurants and bars. He's putting a death blow into them.
Or you can December that you can dine outside. Like,
Right, which
how
is
many
so.
people want to dine outside in December?
I personally don't mind it. I like the cold, but but you're right. Most people do not want to do it, and so he's putting a death blow on these people. And I think most people that are watching this know that restaurants and bars do very well at this time of year. So he shuts these guys down. Fitness centers. Here's the other thing. You know, why aren't we hearing about boosting up your immune system? Getting physically fit. Obesity is a big cause of COVID related hospitalizations, and we are
That's
shutting
one of
down
the things,
gyms.
Jake, that's one of the things that it's all the way across from the federal government to the state government. It very little has ever been said about how to build up your own immunity, how to use your own body to fight against that. Before I jump in here, I'm going to jump in here. If you do have questions, please send those to us in the chat so we can take care of any of those questions. And let's move forward a little bit more now into the restaurants. And I know you've been engaged in some of the restaurants that have defied these orders. First of all, why are they defying these orders? What situation are they at to say, go forward? So we speak to that and go from there.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, it's vast, but I see nothing but pure reasons from these people. Even though the media wants to paint these guys as the villains, right, as the people that are selfish. But let's just start with Larvita. Larvita is their first case. Larvita is a small business owner in southern Minnesota, Lind, outside of Marshall. She's a single mother with 4 beautiful daughters. And she opened up the Friday after Thanksgiving, so it was right when this order took place, and said that she's going to do this because this is an illegal and unconstitutional order. And what kind of lessons is she teaching her daughters if she allows some government politician to shut them down? It's not, for her, it wasn't so much about going out of business. It was more about that lesson to her children to stand up against tyranny.
And that's a
And so
powerful lesson. Very
very
powerful.
much so. And that's why we love Larvita, by the way. Larvita's very heroic. Well, Larvita's heroism kind of spread. And that's why our organization decided we got to go out and tell this hero story. We found Jane up in East Grand Forks. And Jane, I totally forgot about this. The order says that these business owners could be thrown in jail for a year. And actually, it says individuals who break the order, which means if Gary and I were in the same place, even if it was outdoors, we're from 2 different households, we could be put in jail for 90 days. That's literally what the order says. So this is all coming on threats of being put in jail. Don't ever let that leave your mind, is that these women, most of them are women, opened up in defiance of the governor with possibly going to jail. So Jane in East Grand Forks sees this heroism and opens up herself. And she owns this big bar restaurant with the event center, the Boardwalk Bar and Grill. Now you could throw a football 300 yards and hit North Dakota. I'm just kidding. Kirk Cousins couldn't throw that far, so I certainly can't do it. But
it's right across the river.
Right across the river, right? Wide open. So everyone just goes over there. I live in Lake Alamo. Everyone just goes right over to Hudson. So she opens up in defiance of the governor. And then all of a sudden last week, we had a real patriot, Darius, who started this coalition called the Reopen Minnesota Coalition that wanted a bunch of businesses to open up. And we learned about some that were already defying the order, like Jeremiah of the Iron Waffle in Nisswa. And then a bunch of other businesses opened up. And I can't even name them all. I mean, you got Lisa Monet. She's opening up at Alibis in Lakeville. A Greg up at Cornerstone Cafe, Monticello. Another one, East Grand Forks, Joe. He's a 19-year-old business owner. Lisa down in Albert Lee. We're in connection with a lot of these. There's so many names to even mention here. And now we're seeing these guys being threatened. And in the case of some of the early adopters, going to court to defend their right to be opened up. Larvita already had a ruling by a Ramsey County judge against her. She's still opening up in defiance of the court order. That's how hardcore she is.
Right.
Jane is waiting on a decision by a judge up in the 9th Circuit, Polk County. And surprisingly, we didn't get the ruling today. So it's gone through the weekend and a whole workday.
So what is the penalty, or what is the fine, or what's the punishment that's coming against these restaurant owners for opening in defiance of the governor?
That's a good question. So according to the executive order, which is not a law, by the way, it's completely unlawful, but they could be thrown in jail right now according to that. Guess what? There isn't a sheriff or police chief we have found that's willing to do that. So that's good. That's good for your liberty. The police and sheriffs out there seem to be saying, we're not enforcing this thing. The courts are, we don't know the full answer to your question. In the case of Larvita, they're fining her $250 a day she's opened up. Now, for a lot, that's just the cost of doing business. That would be pretty impactful for Larvita. But some of these places, I mean, if that's the fine, good, right? But still, you shouldn't be paying a fine for doing something fully legal.
Right.
But behind all this stuff is, they could potentially throw these people in jail. And the question is there a sheriff or police officer willing to do this? Or is the state going to send state law enforcement officers to go arrest these people?
And just understanding of authority that the Commissioner of Public Safety, the state troopers, the DNR, and the alcohol and tobacco, they are under the authority of the Commissioner of Public Safety versus what is done in the Sheriff's Department. We've got a couple questions here, Jake. I want to kind of address those. First of all, it's a great praise there for Larvita. And asking, is she have a GoFundMe page, or how are they dealing with the legal costs that she's incurring? Any response to that, Jake?
Yeah, great question. So Darius with the Reopen Coalition started a, what is it called? A Go. It's a Christian GoFundMe account with Larvita. If you're curious on it, just email me at jake@actionforliberty.com. I'll send you the link. I think it's close to $40,000 raised in that fund already. And it's been up for a couple weeks. So yeah.
Tell me your email again where people can send that to.
jake@actionforliberty.com.
And then you'll be able to get them the information of where that GoFundMe or that type of organization is out there that way.
That's right. Yep. And then Jane, we set up the one for her, and that raised about $20,000 in, I think, 4 or 5 days. And that one's right on actionforliberty.com's website. Now we're working on just a general fund because, there's so many businesses that are opening up. So, those were the Larvita and Jane were the two originals. We didn't know about Jeremiah up in Nisswa. He never closed down. So that he's actually the OG, but we just didn't know about him until things spread. It's amazing. It's a big state, so we can't know about them all.
And so you would see continued pressure by Governor Walz and Keith Ellison then to use whatever means that they can, intimidation, and to be able to shut them down as well.
I missed the question. Was there a question in there?
Well, it was just like that Governor Walz and Keith Ellison are really using their power, like rightly or wrongly, to be able to challenge into this. I don't know.
Yeah, I would answer that wrongly. Okay. Using your tax money to go after these guys. They got quite a caseload now. They've got lawyers all over the state of Minnesota now having to go after these people. So it's actually very problematic. By the way, if people want to follow a lot of this stuff, actionforliberty.com, you can sign up and you could be on our email list. Otherwise, we also post news on the stories as they develop.
Where do you see this going, Jake?
Well, so I'm very optimistic because I've seen patriots. I went on a tour from Lakeville all the way up to East Grand Forks last Wednesday on this mass reopening. And I went with Representative-elect Eric Mortensen. That's a name you guys got to get familiar with. And went to go visit these heroes. They're opening up. And I started out Lakeville, Minnesota, Alibi Drinkery. It was packed. In fact, the media is all saying super spreaders. Oh, terrible, right? They're being rewarded for opening early. Here's what I saw, Gary. I saw $100 tips being left.
Wow.
I met a woman at Greg at Cornerstone Cafe who didn't know she was going to give her kids Christmas presents because you got to remember, these awful people in the media that are saying that these are selfish business owners and they're against the science. You know what they're doing? They're actually very selfless in what they're doing. They're actually providing a source of revenue for income for their employees, and they're also doing a public good because we want to go to these places. Remember, they can open their business, no one comes, right?
Right.
The real people violating the orders are us, the customers, and we gladly come and we gladly order things and we gladly give huge tips. And it's just a wonderful thing to watch. And I literally heard someone say that, yeah, the first day they opened, she was able to make sure she could give presents to her kids for Christmas.
Wow.
That's the dire thing that's happening right now. Is you got to understand these people, their lives are at stake, and people are losing jobs, their dreams that they, businesses that they opened up.
Well,
So
and there's
it's real
many restaurants that are permanently closed. They are not reopened.
Yeah, a lot of
And you
casualties.
think about what has happened then in our state because of these, there has been no balance relative to the economic component of this. It's all been social driven. And I think that's where, they missed out on what's the economic impact of what are all these doing. It's they have no regard.
I don't think they missed out on that. I think they know what they're doing. Because how can you look at the big corporations going as business as usual, actually increasing in value, Amazon, the Walmarts of the world, and you're killing the small business? It's almost as if it's like they're designed that way, right? And then you're seeing right now, U.S. Congress is passing a 5,000-page bill no one's even reading with $1 trillion at stake. They're just trying to make people more dependent on government and make us poorer too, by the way, because they don't have the money, so they're just printing it. So I think in many ways, this is actually something they know that they're doing. These guys are no friend to liberty. But you asked me, where do I see this going? And I'm optimistic. So I see this defiance of Governor Walz going well. I mean, Jane Larvita, these people are strong. Jeremiah, Lisa Monet. Governor Walsh should stay far away from Lisa Monet. I'll just say that of Alibi Drinkery, because she's probably half his weight and could punch him so hard he would be knocked on the socks. And that's probably what she would do too. So stay away. That guy probably never leaves his mansion anyhow. But also you got to remember, in January, the numbers are on our side now. We're going to take away this guy's emergency powers. So he can't hurt our businesses and can't take our liberties away anymore.
Yeah, I'm just kind of looking at some of the other questions here. So let me see if I can go through this. I watched the meeting with Gazelka, has with the business owners, the restaurant owners who spoke were begging. Free men don't beg. My son and I went to East Grand Forks specifically to eat at the boardwalk. She was closed to support another restaurant owner. Who does Ellison and Walz think they are? These people are supposed to be public servants, not a dictator.
So that person went to Joe's Diner, and that's right, because Jane didn't open up on that Wednesday to get people to Joe's Diner. Joe's a 19-year-old business owner. Joe's dream is to own. So he's 19 years old. He owns 2 restaurants already, one in South Dakota and one in East Grand Forks, and he owns a food truck. His dream is to have 20 restaurants at age 40 and retire.
Wow. Talk about a dream. Come on.
Those 19-year-olds are sitting on their mom's couch, and this guy's got 2 restaurants and employees. This is the American dream, and Walz is crushing this guy. It's unbelievable. So Jane directed everyone to go over to his diner to give business. Plus, Jane's waiting on a judgment too by the courts, which we thought we would have got today. And I was hoping to break it on this Facebook Live, but unfortunately, the judge hasn't ruled yet. Which I don't know how to read that. It's the longest we've waited on a ruling. But yeah, that's great that they went up to East Grand Forks.
But part of this, Jake, I just hear this, is that here's other restaurant owners. They are closing their business so that they can help another restaurant owner open up and get going. And,
right.
That's where it's the patriots banding together and saying, okay, how do we step forward in doing this? Jake, has there been any conversation relative to violation of First Amendment rights in any of this, the right to peacefully assembly? I think we can almost extend that into the restaurants as well. But has that come up as a violation of their rights that way?
It'd be an interesting argument to make. Of course, there's so many violations here. In the case of Chad, who owns Dead on Arms, or is it Dead on Arms in Cloquet, Minnesota, the Attorney General went after him to shut down his indoor gun range, which is a Second Amendment violation. There's actually a state statute specifically protects the exercise of firearm use during emergencies. I think they backed off because of that statute. But you're right. That's a valid point. This could be argued on so many things: due process, equal protection, a lot of things. Also remember that you don't have to have a protected right in the Bill of Rights or the Constitution for it to be a right, right? We have natural rights given to us from our Creator. Government doesn't grant us rights. Tim Walz thinks government grants us rights. That's not true. That's not our foundation.
Come on, Jake. Let's go. Let's get you jacked.
So just because it's not specified as a protected right on the Bill of Rights doesn't mean it doesn't exist. In fact, our Constitution says that. I did see the First Amendment. Most people have not heard this story yet. So in Jane's case, her attorney argued, or actually quoted and cited the Archdiocese in New York's case against Cuomo, which the Supreme Court decided on behalf of the Archdiocese. And our Attorney General made this argument in court. The difference between the Archdiocese and Jane and basically all bars and restaurants is in the Archdiocese case, it's a fundamental right. What is he talking about? Just because we have a First Amendment right, freedom of exercising or practicing religion, right, doesn't mean that these people don't also have a fundamental right to congregate into a bar or restaurant or to even open up a business. That is a fundamental right. Government doesn't grant us that.
Free enterprise.
But that's exactly what the Attorney General's office argued in court. Can you believe that these are the people that we're paying? It's unbelievable.
Well, that's the way it is that way. We got a question that came in, Jake, relative, is there a place that people can go to see the restaurants that are open and how they can support those restaurants that are open?
Yeah, if you go to actionforliberty.com, a couple articles, you just look on our front page or you go to the news section. We posted the restaurants that are open. And if you click on the link, you click, because we took a screenshot of the list, you click on the screenshot and it'll show the updated version. Some didn't end up opening and others did. I think we've done a pretty good job capturing it. The best thing to do is make sure that you just call up your favorite bar or restaurant and ask them if they're opened up in defiance of Governor Walz, because that accomplishes two things. First of all, if they are open, then you know where to go, right? Don't go to Wisconsin. Go help out these patriotic bars and restaurants. If they're not open, you just planted a seed in their head. They go, oh, interesting. I would have customer base. And that was a scary thing for a lot of these people. They didn't know what the customers would be like. They've been rewarded handsomely. I'm not just talking about packed bars and restaurants. We're talking about, I've seen this personally, $100 tips on like $20 bills. I mean, people are very generous. Not shocked by that, by the way.
By the way, we are talking with Jake Duesenberg from Action for Liberty. This is the First Tuesday Conservatives, along with Alpha News MN. And Alpha News is great in writing on a lot of these stories as well. And we thank Scott Nitzel from First Tuesday Conservatives to arranging for this as well. But I think, Jake, you really come to a point, how do patriots work together? And you really laid it out there. And just call those local restaurants, those bars, and ask them if they are open, and let them know that you would be willing to support them. And, if there's pushback, that you would be able to do that. One of the things that people forget, the justices or the judges here in Minnesota, most of them are elected. And if we get some of these negative rulings coming out that usurp our rights, that's a reason to take these judges out. So, those are certain things that we can do. Are there other things, Jake, that you say that we can do relative to standing up as patriots relative to these issues?
Yeah, we settled this in January, folks. We supposedly have the numbers to end Walz's emergency powers in the legislature. We have to pass it in the House. We need 4 Democrats to continue voting the way they've voted already. We've had 6. And then we need the Senate to do what's right. And I imagine if we pass the House and Gazelka doesn't give us a vote in the Senate, he's going to have some real problems. You're going to have some problems on your hands, Paul Gazelka, if you don't do that. So we believe that we have a good shot at getting this thing done. Now, I'm not done after that. Like, this battle doesn't go away. We want these guys to be paid back and remunerated for what they went through, because we have our attorney general going after these businesses and threatening them. And then in the case of some of these racking up legal fees, we owe it back to these bars and restaurants to take care of them. That's one of the things. Governor Walsh should be impeached. He should be impeached.
How does one go about that in Minnesota?
We have a legislator that's going to put forward the articles of impeachment on Governor Walz.
Okay.
And, you think about Trump was impeached, right? And the thing that they impeached him for is abuse of power. And you look at what they alleged was his abuse of power, that pales in comparison to what Governor Walz is doing right now to citizens of Minnesota. So if the Democrats can impeach Trump for what they did, we should be able to impeach Governor Walz for what he did. If that's unsuccessful, 2022, that guy needs to be fired by the voters.
That's right.
So we're not going away. This thing, what he has done is so damaging, he's going to pay for it. And we're going to make sure that happens.
Could there be a class action lawsuit against the governor for any of these activities?
It's one of the most common questions I get. And I think what we have to tell people to do is not put their faith in these robed gangsters. There's just not good judges in Minnesota. What happens is judges get appointed by governors. And if you look at most of these judges, they are Mark Dayton and Tim Walz appointees. Okay.
Correct.
And so we need a different course. I personally would be a fan of class action lawsuits, but if you think you're going to get a good, if you think you got a good shot in the court system, I just urge you to rethink that, because most likely in the case of the ones that have come in the past, they get dismissed by these Walz and Mark Dayton appointees. And it's a lot of time involved in that stuff. We also got behind the recall Walz effort. That had 3 petitions that were blocked by the Supreme Court Justice in Minnesota, which was actually a Tim Pelini appointee. So we have to not put our faith in these rogue gangsters. Wisconsin clearly has better judges than us. They have a clearly better Supreme Court than us. We just don't have that in Minnesota. And Gary, you're right. We need to probably get rid of these judges. These are elected positions, and most of these guys run unopposed. But I can't change that tonight. I can't change that in the next month. Can't even change that in the next 2 years. It's going to take an election. It's probably going to take multiple elections. So don't put your trust in these rogue gangsters. Now, the reason we're in court is, so a class action would be an offensive fight, right? We're on a defensive fight. The attorney general is getting these judges to hear these cases. Technically, these judges could throw them out. If I was a judge, and I'm running for election now, if I was a judge, I would throw this thing out on the merits of this thing's unconstitutional. But right. No judge is doing that. In fact, in many of these cases, in Jane and Larvita, they're granting ex parte restraining orders, meaning this doesn't even, Jane and Larvita don't even know that they're getting a restraining order, and the attorney general goes to them, gets this, and then delivers a judgment already made. So, yeah, these judges are not on our side.
One of the things we understand here is that one of the best things by far the Patriots can do is come along and support these existing business owners. And like Jake, you said, call them, see if you can help them open up, even to the point of, is there other things that they could do? Is there upgrades in their restaurant that they can do as contractors that they could come and support? There's a lot of ways that we can support these independent businesses out there. And if you're a praying person, I would encourage you to be praying for that as well. Jake, I want to step back a little bit. And how did you come about this passion for Action for Liberty? How did you get here? And tell us a little of your story to put you in this position where you're at, Jake.
I
heard the service time, and I'm reminded that when you're in service that you do take an oath, and that oath doesn't end when you leave the service, if I'm correct.
I agree with that. I I didn't plan on having a career in politics, and who knows if I even will. But certainly, as president of Action for Liberty, it's a full time job at this point, and we got a whole staff and team and wonderful volunteers and an excellent board. Um, I left the service 7 years ago, right? 12 years in the Army as an infantry officer, and 2 deployments. And all my time in the military, there was nothing more patriotic than what I'm doing right now. I didn't know how far I was going to go in politics. And then this year happened, and I was like, this is a real battle for liberty. And if you think about our mission, it's to protect liberty for the next generation. I've got three sons, the youngest being 4 months old, right? And I think of their future, and there's no way I'm going to let these tyrants win. I refuse. I would go to jail over this issue. I was willing to die for this country in wars that I don't even think really related to our liberty. I sure as hell will die for something like this. This is important. And that's what you're finding with the Larvitas and the Janes of the world. They are willing to go to jail over this issue because it's that important. So, when COVID hit, we were all in this boat. We didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know. And of course, Action for Liberty had to make some cuts with some vendors, and it was tough. And we didn't know if we would raise another dime for the year and what would happen. But we found an issue that was very important. We fully and strongly support freedom and liberty, and we took this on. And it wasn't popular, by the way, even in conservative ranks at the time. It was not popular. And this year we've more than doubled in size, and it's just amazing what's happened. And our support from across Minnesota is unbelievable. And now I've got to meet heroes and Jane and Larvita and Lisa and Gary or Greg and Jeremiah, Joe. These people are like family now. Like, it's amazing, this community we've built. And so I'm just so honored to be leading this organization, and our whole team is just committed to this. So that's our background here, and we're not going anywhere. We'll live on, and we're gonna fight this one.
Well, Jake, thank you for your service to your country, or our country, as you served in the military, and also thank you for the service that you're doing now to protect liberty. I got involved in politics 16 years ago, really, and it was about not so much about myself, but it was about my kids and my grandkids. And that's the battle that I'm engaged in today. It's fighting for my grandkids that way. Jake, we got another question that came in here, a comment about the science of viral transmissions in high heat environments like saunas. No science with respect to bars or restaurants. What about UV upgrades or HVAC systems? Any science governing the aspect of the issue and impact upon the decisions? Plane cabins are completely replace air every few minutes. And people are flying even though cooped up for a period of time. I don't know if you grasped some of those questions that are rolled into that comments, but maybe you can comment a little bit on that question, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing the media and the politicians always want to go to. It's the science. Well, what science is there, right? There's no science here. There's no scientific study, like true scientific study being done. What they're doing is they're gathering mass data and making assumptions. They're using modeling, right? It's so obviously flawed because whatever science they're quoting is totally different in other states. Like South Dakota goes a totally different direction than Minnesota. I would say Wisconsin goes a different direction, but we have to remember that Governor Evers wants to do the same things Walz does. He just has the problem with the Supreme Court saying you can't have these powers. But Texas and Florida, they went a different direction.
The Supreme Court is mostly elected by the people in Wisconsin as opposed to appointed. Yes, we do have elections in Minnesota, but that's not usually how they get on there. So right. I hear you.
So yeah, it's challenging. The one thing that we do know, like I alluded to before, that's part of science that we've known for a while, is the fact that in a young developing mind, these sports and extracurriculars are very important for a developing mind, and they're taking that away. We also know through the evolution of humans, for as long as we've been on this planet, that we are social creatures. We are very unique and different than a lot of other animals on this planet. We are very social. And what we're doing is we're masking up. So we're actually taking away some of the face. We're almost dehumanizing things. We're telling us that we can't go see our family and friends. By the way, that is actually against the governor's orders. You can't go see family and friends. You can't be with people from another household. You could be thrown in jail, according to the executive order, for 90 days for doing that. Everyone's abusing it. Most people don't even know it. So it's very dehumanizing in that sense. So, the science is so flawed. I mean, listen, if mask mandates and lockdowns worked, then why is California in the shape that they're in right now, right? They should be leading the nation with the least amount of COVID cases. We don't know. We don't know why there was a spike in mid-November through all the upper Midwestern states, and Minnesota being the only one with the mask mandate, lockdown, all that kind of stuff, is just like all the other ones coming down. I don't know if people know this. North Dakota, Wisconsin, St. Croix County should be a cesspool of COVID cases with all the bars and restaurants opening, right? Yep. And we're all going down. So they don't know this science. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. So saying that this is a science is just it's buffoonery. And I just don't trust these government officials. And I don't know why people don't. Even like, here's two real hypocritical things. The foremost experts nationally is Fauci. He told us back in, was it April or May, that masks don't matter. They don't matter. And he's now said, well, the reason he said that was he had to lie to the people because we had to make sure that masks weren't taken for medical staff. You can't go tell people lies and then retract and act like nothing's happened. Deborah Birx was just caught. I don't know how, but it was reported here by The Hill on the last day that she went on a Thanksgiving trip up to, I think, Delaware with her family, multiple different.
Oh yeah, there's more than one of those.
This. Right.
The governor of California, his attorney general. There's a lot of this where they'll put out the orders and then not abide by them themselves. We got another comment that came in here from Debbie, and thank you for fighting for all of us, Jake. I flew back from Minnesota from the UK in November. I had no problem with my health. I'm now hearing from my husband in the UK about their super COVID tier 4 lockdown. I'm begging my husband, who has dual citizenship, to come to Minnesota. So there is, I want to say, some freedom, but I'm reluctant to go too deep into that because we see what's going on here. Jake, one other topic I want to touch base of. So we've got, I don't know how many cases. Do you know how many cases we've had in Minnesota and how many that have are not in treatment now? It's got to be a couple 100,000 here in the Minnesota that have had this.
Yeah, I think that's right. The deaths are around the 4,000 mark, but I don't know what the cases are. And that's the other thing that when people start questioning the government's approach to this is initially it was hospitalizations and deaths. If you remember, they started this out by 15 days to slow the spread. Remember that 283 days ago, we need 15 days to slow the spread. Well, that's because, and everyone understood that, is that you can't, you got to have the capacity in the hospitals to take care of,
be able to deal with it,
especially when we didn't know. Now we're here 284 days later in the lockdown. I just have to ask the question, what were these guys doing this whole time? Why weren't they getting ready for this capacity? They say there's a surge, 8 months later back in November, and we got shut down because you guys didn't have the hospital capacity ready to go. And many of these guys were the ones that said, oh, get ready for the second surge. So, that's the problem. But that was the initial problem, is the deaths and hospitalizations. Well, those numbers weren't scary enough to these guys. So then they went to the COVID cases, right?
Right. See, but the other thing I'm saying in this is that, so you've had COVID and you didn't die, and you're feeling good, but you still can't go out to these restaurants, even though that you have the antibody in your system. And it's saying, okay, what about these folks that have gone through this? Now, are you punishing them because they can't go out?
Yeah, it's an excellent point. The other thing, one of my problems with the mask mandate, because I'm very much against this mask mandate in the sense that.
This is not a mask. Let me tell you this. So this is just real facial hair. So it's not a mask.
Well, there are a lot of problems with it, but it's really a submission to government. That's the way I've looked at this from day one. Once they said this is a mandate, But one of the things that masks are useful for is to show people who's sick, right? Japanese
Right.
have been doing this forever. Japanese are big travelers. They spend a lot of money in tourism, in America, especially the West Coast, Hawaii, and stuff like that. And when they have an illness, they'll put a mask over themselves, so we know who is sick, right?
Right.
So, but everyone's wearing a mask, so you don't know that. So that's
Mhm.
actually that would be a helpful thing if that was even to stop the spread of COVID and at least the air transmission of it.
Right.
Masks would have a small purpose if you had droplets and you were in real close proximity. But this idea that, well, if I'm in a store like Menards and I gotta wear a mask and that's somehow going to protect the guy that's 20 feet away from me, it's just so utterly ridiculous. But enough people bought into it.
Well, I think we're going to wrap this up here a little bit, but one of the things I'll always like to ask, so what's your favorite Christmas tradition that you have at the Duesenberg household?
Well, this year it's defying the governor.
That didn't take long to come out of that tradition.
I think I really enjoy the stockings on Christmas morning. And when you got the little kids, and I got the 6 and 3-year-old, I've got the 4-month-old that has no idea what's going on, but the 6 and 3-year-old, that's a fun age. So coming down and they see just the things surrounding the Christmas tree, but they see the stockings. The other one that I really enjoy, because I grew up Lutheran, my dad's actually a Lutheran pastor, is that Christmas Eve service. And that's just unfortunate this year. A lot of people won't be doing that. One of the craziest things about 2020 is I watched Easter at my church on TV. That was so bizarre. And that means I'm singing and there's not a lot of people drowning out my voice. So it was a little bizarre at home, but I would say that's probably the other tradition I like, is that Christmas Eve candlelight service.
Yeah, I remember that growing up too in a Lutheran church, and that late Christmas Eve service where you'd have the candles, and that was when you could have candles in churches and you'd get the wax on things, but and then you'd sing Silent Night and you just go home after that. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, we used to do that in our church, the actual candles, but I'm sure there are some that are too risk adverse.
Jake, I wanted to kind of wrap this up too with you. So one of the things I really think that we should do at some point here is get these heroes that you're talking about, and from Lind and from East Grand Forks and Lakeville, and really get them on, because they are the heroes here of what is taking place. So I think that'd be great for us to do. So Jake Duesenberg from Action for Liberty, where can people go to find more information about these restaurants?
Yeah, just go to actionforliberty.com. We're doing our best to keep you updated, and I don't want you to miss out on our January showdown here at the Capitol. That's another important thing. So we're going to end this emergency powers in January with the legislature to save these heroes too, because right now they're being assaulted by our government. It's really unfortunate. But if you go to actionforliberty.com, you're going to learn about those battles. We're still waiting for a ruling in Jane Moss's case, and then a bunch of there's 2 that have a trial tomorrow, or I'm sorry, hearing tomorrow. It's just it's a fluid environment, so it's very difficult to tell you where to go other than just a central place as actionforliberty.com. Our Facebook page too would be another good.
Okay.
Good
and the other thing that I think that Jake, that you said too about these restaurants, is call your favorite restaurant and see if they are open. And if they're not, encourage them to open, or what it would take for them to open. Because if you demonstrate the support and a willingness to come in, then they're more encouraged to do it. So there's what we can do for that. And 2, if you're a praying person, we encourage you to pray for these restaurant owners and the workers. This is really tough times for them. And if they want to have those Christmas presents, that's kind of what they need to do as well. So Jake, thanks very much. I appreciate that. That's Jake Duesenberg from Action for Liberty. We do have another program coming up here in January, mid-January, with Dr. Scott Jensen. He will then be former state senator, and we'll talk more about COVID and some of the challenges about the reporting of those deaths and how do we move forward from there. We'll also have more understanding of where we're at relative to the vaccinations at that time as well. So this is Gary Borgendale on behalf of Alpha News, MN, and First Tuesday Conservatives. I want to thank you, Jake, for being with us tonight, and Merry Christmas to everyone. Thank you very
Merry
much and happy Hanukkah.